I'd like to call to order the regular monthly business meeting for May 2nd, 2020, excuse me, 2025 for the Island Transit Board of Directors. The first item of business is roll call. So Jill Johnson and Melanie Bacon are excused from today's call. Janet St. Clair, I see your smiling face. Craig Sear,
Present.
James P. Merrow is present. I am present. And then I see Danny Julian, our representative from Union, is online as well.
Yes,
So we do have a quorum. Okay. And then has everyone had an opportunity to look at the agenda? Any changes? Okay, may I have a motion to approve the agenda as submitted?
So moved, unless somebody else did it online. So moved.
May I have a
Second.
second? Oh, thank you, Craig. I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That would be silly. The agenda is approved. And then the consent agenda. Has everyone had an opportunity? Are there questions, comments, feedback about the consent agenda?
I'll
That
move
means
the
that-
consent agenda.
The motion,
Second.
second. I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as submitted. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone approve or anyone disapprove? Motion passes. This is the time set aside for members of the public to speak to the board about subjects of concern or interest or items not already set aside for a public hearing. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. Public comment may be ended or modified if the comments become disruptive or are not germane to business at hand. Input requiring lengthier comment is best submitted in writing. Do we have anyone in the room? Anyone online? You can unmute yourself. Hearing none, we will close the public input and comment and go to business item number 1, discussion of Oak Harbor project funding. And I'm going to turn it over to our executive director, Melinda Adams.
Good morning, everyone. Business item number 1, Oak Harbor Police Partnership. So I would like to present an idea to the board. This is a discussion item for consideration this month. And in June, I will provide an outline of an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, and a scope of work. This activity should not require a budget amendment. In April, board member Merrill and I met with Chief Slowick of the Oak Harbor Police Department. We discussed a partnership that would benefit the Oak Harbor Police and Island Transit. Island Transit would like to provide a financial contribution for an electric bike safety training program for 20 officers in July of 2025. In exchange, Chief Slowick and I will develop a scope of work outlining enhanced bike patrols at 4 priority shelters and at Harbor Station. In addition, we will also include enhanced training for our drivers, such as de-escalation training and other practical training elements. So with that, I'd like to open it up for any questions or discussion as to your thoughts on this partnership.
Having been involved with that, I support it, although I'm not sure it requires a vote, but
Right.
I'm supportive of it because we do need to maintain security and increase security and safety of the drivers and the personnel in transit vehicles.
Anyone online comments? Janet, I see you took yourself off mute. Janet,
Craig also raised his hand.
we'll go to Janet and then to Craig.
All right. Just to clarify, this has no budget implications, so it is an operational decision.
That is partially correct, Janet. The contribution, the financial sponsorship is within our current budget of 2025.
And is it within your contracting authority to sign the MOU?
Yes.
Okay, that's
Absolutely.
clarifying. Thank you.
Craig,
Yes. How much will this cost?
They are requesting 15,000, so I am looking at a number between 10 to 15 based on the scope of work and the amount of patrols that they're willing to enhance, on the off hours. For example, at Harbor Station, we have someone there from about 7 to 3:30 during the week. So I would like to see the patrols, be ramped up in the evenings, you know, when, we need more coverage there. So we still need to come to terms on what that exchange looks like, but it's a great value for the amount of money.
And is this an ongoing expense year by year, or is this just a one-off to get this program started?
That's a great question. And in our scope of work and our MOU, I think what we will likely start out with is maybe a 1-year period. But we have to come up with that term. Because we'll be financing just one class that's being held in July for the officers. We initially talked about, something that was, county-wide, that, other jurisdictions would be able to come and attend as well. But when we really talked through the practicality of it, the officers, for example, in the Freeland area or Clinton, you don't see the sheriffs on e-bikes, you know, through the more rural areas like that. But we could certainly open it up to them should there be a desire.
And will we be getting any kind of reporting from the police department about the kinds of interactions that they've had at our Oak Harbor Station and the other pickup points?
You know, yeah, that could be part of our scope of work. That's a great
It
idea.
generally is.
It seems like
Just some sort of, you kind of set your metrics, but yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I think we definitely would want something like that, so that if this were to ever come to an end, we'd know what our challenge is. So I would hope that would be included in the scope.
Okay, excellent.
Sounds like a good partnership.
Thank you.
Janet,
Yeah, thank you, Craig. Those are great questions. I have a follow-up question. It has to do with the executive director's report. And it's a sensitive question, and I'm just gonna raise it. And if it's something we need to think about and come back to later, I'm fine with that. The Island County Sheriff's Department has had a frequent statement that we do not collaborate with ICE, only we are in the business of law enforcement. Will this agreement, given the actions that are happening around the country and the note in the executive director's report, I would want to verify that Oak Harbor will also not be using our buses for any immigration activities, enforcement activities.
So recently, I don't know how far we want to go into this, but recently we did receive a letter from the Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, regarding federal funding to transit agencies and the requirement to comply with ICE. And I think
actually, for the purpose of this meeting, I think we'd say this is an emerging issue and we're looking at it.
Yeah, I'm fine with coming back to this conversation because of all of the things we're working on, Matt. I appreciate that. I just want to raise that as a concern that I would have as a board member, and it has many tentacles of implications.
It's being actively reviewed and pursued, yeah.
Thank you.
Join the meeting.
So
Hey, go
that's
ahead, Craig.
just yeah, sorry, that's an excellent observation from Commissioner St. Clair. We should definitely follow that up. That's a key policy position for this agency. And I mean, I'd be willing to meet next Friday over that. That's something we need to understand. And outside of the partnership with the Oak Harbor Police, if we've received a letter with a mandate to do what the executive director just said. I want to know about that, and I want to talk about it with fellow board members.
So I can clarify, and Matt, if you want to add to this, the letter was received by the Federal Transit Administration and shared with local agencies, so it was not directed to us, but it was directed to those that are direct recipients of federal funding.
And where it's gonna come to a point is that we're in the process of doing the annual certs and assurances, and so that's where it's gonna be closely looked at and reviewed and make sure.
Well, before we sign and do those certs and assurances, the board needs to have a discussion about it.
Yeah, they haven't, my understanding is I haven't seen the 2025 format drop yet, so that's kind of what we're waiting on right now.
Thank you again to Commissioner St. Clair. That was a salient point, huge.
I think it's a great idea, a great partnership. I know that security and just a level of safety has been something that we've been talking about, and just a presence of safety. I think that this would be something to help to solve for that. I too would love to have some of these follow-up items addressed at a future time. But any other discussions before we move on? Okay. All right, we'll move to business item number 2, timeline for the 2030. Gosh, that's crazy. 6-year transit development plan and fiscal year 2026 annual budget. And I will turn it over to Brian.
Good morning, board members. Staff wanted to take this opportunity to inform the board that we are kicking off the process for updating the 2024 annual report. And so that our 2025 to 2030 forecast, known as the Transit Development Plan, is, that whole development process is kicking off. Each year, state DOT requires an update to our 6-year plan for submission by September 1st. As a reminder, the Transit Development Plan is an annual report
in my office, there's a
My God, it's
Okay. As a reminder, the Transit Development Plan is an annual report and a 6-year forecast. While it contains budget elements, it is not a budget document, and we are not obligated to strictly follow it. Melinda and I will be meeting with department heads to discuss plans, projects, and programs that may be implemented in 2025 and beyond. Years 2025 and 2026 are to reflect fiscally constrained projects. The future years depict a forecast of projects. Washington State Department of Transportation requires projects, programs, and planning efforts that are tied to grant funding to be listed in the Transit Development Plan to be eligible for grant funding. The Transit Development Plan supports projects listed in the Regional Transportation Improvement Plan, and it is our submission to that. During the months of May and June, staff will be working together to draft the Transit Development Plan. A draft will be presented to the board at the July meeting, and we will launch our public process at that time. At our August board meeting, we will hold a public hearing and present the final draft to the board for recommendation to Washington State Department of Transportation. Public comments and changes may be incorporated during this time, and then a final copy will be submitted to the Washington State Department of Transportation by the September 1st, 2025 deadline. And with that, I am open to any questions the board members may have on this process.
You answered my two of my questions, which was the timeline and the final draft due dates. When you present it to us in July, will we have any sort of side by side on what was current and what has changed, or what will that look like, and what will we be looking at?
If the board would like, we could present both a red line version that will show changes from the prior year, as well as the draft that we are releasing to the public, so that you could then see the changes as well as, the final document that's going to go forward to the public.
personally, I think that that would be helpful, just so that we can know where we started and then where we're moving to, if that's not an over ask from a work perspective, the red line.
Not at all. I strongly support that as well.
Any other questions online, or, I'm sorry, James Pinero, did you have? another
I was
comment?
just mentioning, I'm supporting you with that, requirement.
Especially for those that have not been involved in the process previously, I think that would be helpful. Any comments from online, Craig? I
Right.
see
So
Councilperson
this,
Lee.
thank you. And I'm a council member, it turns out. PDP is a, future looking document, planning document, I guess, maybe not technically speaking a planning document, but nonetheless, it seems like it'd be appropriate for it to reflect, and be driven by our long-term vision. And we do have some projects that previous versions of this board have given direction on. I'm thinking particularly of the development of the adjacent property, the north property, and also the South Woodby Transit Center, et cetera. When are we going to have a board meeting around the vision of the or a long range planning meeting?
Well, that's a great question. We are working through our scope of work on the long-range plan to go to add, meaning to go to an RFP to hire a consultant on board. So we're a little bit early in the process, but we hope to have that out to RFP sometime in May or June.
Okay, because I'm thinking about our fossil fuel transition, which we have made some changes to, but anyway. Yeah.
And our long-range planning process will take in the neighborhood of 18 months to 2 years for a full plan. So we will be, presenting it and discussing it as we go along. And we'll of course be sharing the RFP with the board.
So our current projects though are not, those have fallen into previous long range plans. So those continue, correct?
They will be included as part of that review for the long range plan, absolutely.
Okay, but they're part of the review, which I certainly understand, but they're also moving forward. We are, for example, we're swapping conservation easements with the Whidbey Camino Land Trust. Once that's complete, we're going to be moving forward with the usage of the north property, et cetera.
Correct. Yes, that will be included.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments for Brad or the room? Thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
All right, business item number 3, authorization to apply for 12 35-foot hybrid diesel electric buses in the FY 25 to 27 5339B bus and bus facilities grant program. Melinda's going to address that for us.
Yes, so bit of an update for all of us here. I am asking permission to pursue grant funding for vehicles that we already have existing in the hydrogen request. So I'm going to go through and kind of explain what my reasoning is here. I'm using a double-pronged approach to ensure the agency is able to secure funding for replacement vehicles. So recently, Island Transit was awarded approximately $15 million in hydrogen replacement buses. As you're aware, a request was made to flip the fuel source from hydrogen to hybrid electric. Although the request was supported by WashDOT, our state partners, and the local FTA office, unfortunately, we were notified that the request was denied in DC at FTA headquarters. Representative Larson, who is a supporter of this project, would like to appeal the decision with FTA headquarters. And we are in support of that. However, it has been recommended by WashDOT that we pursue the 2025 Bus and Bus Facilities Grant Program in case that request is denied. So we will only end up following through on one of these items. Should the appeal go through, we would not need to apply. Should the appeal be denied, we would be ready to go to reapply for that state funding. So we are requesting authorization to apply for 12 35-foot hybrid diesel electric buses in the 2025 to 27 5339 Bus and Bus Facilities Grant Program. We will be requesting approximately 12,455,702. That is our share, or our 80% share of the total project amount. Questions?
I'm willing to make the motion if the chair would have you do it.
Let's see if there's any comments from,
We can do questions after. Go ahead, and we'll do discussion after.
go ahead, James.
Strongly, I move to authorize Island Transit to apply for 12 35-foot hybrid diesel electric buses through the federal FY 25 to 27 5339 Bus and Bus Facilities Grant Program.
And I strongly second it. Now, my discussion is that we are in so many ways, financially, nationally uncertain times. And I know, Melinda, you and I have talked about really keeping an eye on our federal and state funds during these uncertain times. It was nice to see sine die end in the state legislature, knowing we're not without future challenges at the state, even though we were able to finish that session. So I think these are exactly the times in which we have, you called it dual pronged. When I was going through like the 2008 recession with federal and state fundings, I called it Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C if needed, because we have to know that we may need to pivot. And I appreciate you setting the stage to pivot as necessary. And I just want to thank Representative Larson for his support, and also as a board member, take this moment to offer my condolences to him and ask you to send him a card on the passing of his mother.
Extremely disappointing news about the denial of our, transition away from the hydrogen buses. That's extremely disappointing news. Do we know what the appeal process is and who is the decision maker on that appeal?
We do not. Whoever is leading, Janet, I'm not sure if you know the name of who's leading right now at FTA headquarters. When I say appeals process, Representative Larson is very adamant that he wanted to text Sean Duffy to, oppose this decision. I made it clear that it was the FTA headquarters office. So he is simply writing a letter, asking them to reconsider. So I don't believe it's a formal appeal process, but that is the language that I was using.
On a
Okay.
big picture thing, Craig, Representative Larson, when I was in DC, was very clear that a lot of the transportation funding is not subject to some of the vagaries that are happening in DC because they are structurally set in law. But I don't know how this one falls within that or not, not to mention the whole challenge of appropriations belonging to Congress. So I just think these are just uncertain times. Was pretty clear there are certain things that and in his previous and current position on the Senate Transportation Committee, really understands what is in the purview and not subject to some of this, but we just don't know. I don't know anyway. So I think this is a good approach.
Structurally set in law used to mean something. So let's cross our fingers, I guess. But I'm supportive certainly of the two-prong approach, and I will cross my fingers on it.
I too am in favor of this, and I commend you and the team for having the foresight to run parallel plans when we have an unknown. And, you know, even if we have someone that is supportive, we just don't have control over that right now. So I think this is the parallel plan, and the ability to pivot will help us to not stagnate if something happens with that $15 million. That, sir.
I did want to mention, there is no doubt there are significant interest groups promoting or advancing the hydrogen option. And so whatever lobbying or interest groups that would be interested in the hybrid alternative, if we can get them to turn up the heat on the decision makers, that would be, I think, beneficial. I'm just trying to think of the behind the scenes actions that are going on, but I guarantee you that no way does a hydrogen bus program go come this distance unless there's some huge money and interest involved in it. So that's my statement on it.
And I'm not opposed to the hydrogen option. I was supportive because at the time we were presented with this, there was a lot of conversation about the potential for green hydrogen and what's going forward. And I think it is part of our future zero emissions policies. What is hard for me right now is fiscally the expense of trucking this out to us and what we have to do for facilities. But I'm still supportive of a multiple strategies to get us to zero emissions. And to Greg's questions earlier, I think these actions that we're taking today further commit us to the board policies that we set into place for our zero emissions by 2040 plan.
Thank you for that enlightening input, Commissioner Sinclair.
I don't know if that's sardonic or not, but I'll take it as a compliment.
I'm not sardonic.
Do you need action? Because I'm hearing a call for me in the background.
What did
Are
you
we
say?
gonna take action? I have to go. So can we, I'm sorry to
Oh.
call the vote, but I'm hearing
Any other
a call
comments,
out.
questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second to authorize Island Transit to apply for 1235-foot hybrid diesel electric buses through the federal 2526 5339 bus and bus facilitation grant program. All in favor, say aye.
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 And no one is opposed, so the motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Okay, we will move on to the executive director report.
Okay. So we'll start off with staffing updates. Operations manager position recruitment is underway with Karis Consulting outside of Olympia. The Karis team was secured off the state contract and have had a family home on Whidbey for decades, making them a great choice for recruiting the right talent for Island Life. We are in phase 2 of the recruitment process from April 23rd through May 29th. The recruitment brochure is outstanding and a national advertising campaign has been launched with nearly 60 associations and websites combined. Karis will conduct screening interviews on an ongoing basis and will review both A and B list candidates with Island Transit the week of June 9th. As of my updated email last week, we've already received 5 valid applicants, so that's very exciting. I have not received them personally, but they are doing their part in filtering that information. So we currently have, as of today, I believe we went from 3 to 2 operators in training. Is that correct, Brad?
Yes.
Yes. And 5 in rideshare. This brings us to full staff with operators at 53. Next recruitment will take place in June for budgeted positions. A chart per board member Sarah's request is attached. Reflecting the April 2025 staffing levels, and please understand it is a snapshot in time as we receive either resignations or folks drop out of the training arena.
Can I-
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Oh,
So, um, so this isn't really exactly what I asked for. What I want to avoid is the snapshot in time. I want to see trends. Are we going up or down? And director manager Brad Wimler had a graphic 4 or 5 months ago that also there's a missing piece of data, which is how many drivers have left in the last month, how many have retired, how many just found another job. The board, since my time on it, has up until the point that Brad made his presentation, we'd never seen data like that. And I believe that the trend is the key thing we need, not the snapshot in time. Are we going in the right direction? Because if we've had 5 departures in the last month, that's really important information for us to know. And I hear what you said, Melinda, that we are fully staffed. I'd like to see the trends. I'm thinking I might try to draft up a chart that you could tweak, but I'd actually this is so important. I mean, this is the attracting drivers will allow us to expand our services, and if we don't do that and don't know we're heading in the wrong direction because of departures, then the board is out of touch, and we were out of touch in years past. So and I guess I would add one other thing. I think this needs to be a standing agenda item in our board packet and not in the executive director report, because looking back, if I want to look back a year, I can just open the previous year's packet and we would be able to see where we were then. So when the finance controller presents his data, you'll see in there a 13-month chart with all kinds of lines, trend lines moving up and down. And that is just so helpful because it tells us where we were a year ago. So anyway, enough for my comments. I'll let you continue.
No, thank you. Thank you for your comments. I believe you said it was presented 5 months ago. Is that correct, Craig?
Somewhere around that time, yeah.
Okay. So, Brad did try to reproduce what he had produced previously. So, Brad, can you go address that and
Yeah, I was trying to recreate that, and we've had a fair amount of movement, both positive and negative recently. And that kind of, at some point, even with the trend lines there, we have to have a snap in time. It's where we're at the first of every month, or the last part of every month. We have to pick a point in time, and so that
Sure.
kind of threw off our development of that chart.
So a quick question, then follow up to that. So Craig, I think to Brad's point, we need to determine like what the baseline is. How far back do we want to start? Is it a year? Is it 2 years? And then draw a line in the sand there and then figure out what the data points are around people that were hired, people that were in training, and then what came out at the end of the funnel. Would that be helpful? Because I know going back and trying to recreate history, if you don't have the data, isn't always, it's all manual and it leaves room for error. So
what I would to answer that, I would say, don't try to go mine the data back for a year, go back a month or two, and then preserve that data. And then each month, just add to it on the trend lines. When we get to a year, next January or whenever, then we can, then we'll have what we need. So, just whatever's convenient, whatever, and also whatever date you want to choose as the cutoff is fine. You know, you could choose the 15th of the month. It doesn't really matter what date you choose in the month, because we'll still see the trends. There'll be valid trends.
If I could make a recommendation, to look at some of the recruiting efforts where you had a large recruiting class, maybe third quarter of last year. And let's follow those people and then anybody that got picked up after that, if that's a reasonable ask. Because at least we'd have a baseline and a population that we can see, where did those people end up? Did they stay? Did they leave? Are they, are they productive? Does that make sense?
Yes,
Does that exist? Am I making it up?
it doesn't exist, but it shouldn't be too hard for us to track down with going back just a limited amount of time.
For the map, go ahead.
I was just going to add that every time I get on the 60 bus and see John doing the ride share with a new driver, a smile crosses my face. And that has been happening a lot lately. It's been really good to see so many new drivers. I know we're making progress. Don't think I don't know that. I know that. But I want this chart is going to be our canary, showing us if we're going sideways at some point that we don't expect.
It's funny, Craig, I was gonna save it until board comments, but I too have been delighted when my daughter or other her peers, whether it's on the fixed routes or paratransit, report back that they got to drive with somebody that was in training. So
Yeah.
that's great.
So with regard to the trend line, I think that's essential because raw data for any one snapshot doesn't give us any situational awareness about where things are in the long term. So 2 years, maybe on a quarterly basis, or 2 years on a monthly basis. What do you think? Or you all?
I personally think a year is fine.
I would agree with that, especially because 2 years back, we're still in post-pandemic circumstances, which really skewed our data in a weird way. So I don't want that to be the baseline. And then we go, yay, look how great we're doing, when really we were in a very skewed time in our work. I think a year back would be fine.
On a monthly basis?
Monthly.
Okay, I would be fine with quarterly because I would, but that's fine. I think Craig's not wrong.
Yeah, and I think to Janet's point, any area where COVID, et cetera, where we identify that it's an anomaly persistency issue for whatever reason, that's gonna include the data, so to maybe look at that. Never been a spreadsheet I didn't love, so you can send it to me.
Really?
Sorry.
Thank you. Just a quick update on our NeoGov online recruitment. It is online and active as of April 21st. This is a huge benefit to our agencies and and all those folks who will be able to apply now for positions in an online format. It's streamlined for our HR department, for our hiring managers, to allow them to go through and vet applicants as we receive them. So very excited about that. The next area that I wanted to touch on was our projects. Terry's Corner, an update. Our lease agreement is under review by legal, Matt. Right now, with the 12-month moratorium, it will likely not affect this particular project. I checked in with Jeff Lehman because permits have already been issued for design, and with construction likely not to begin for 1 year, we should be in good shape here. So the next update on South Whidbey Transit Center, I'm just making a very brief comment on this. We will need all board members present at June's board meeting to discuss South Whidbey Transit Center. To date, Island Transit has expended approximately $180,000 in local funds to meet the requirements of NEPA. We are currently out of compliance due to the delay. We've been kind of pushing this forward each month on the board agenda, but I want to make sure all of our board members are here to make a decision and have everyone fully informed on how to move forward. So we will have an executive session next month, and we will have Joe Bennett and KPFF here to discuss the project in total. Yes, ma'am.
Do we need more than our normal hour and a half, just because it's hard for me to pivot in the moment of the meeting because my schedule backs up? If you think that's going to be an extended board meeting, I encourage us to take a look at our schedules now and block out extra time if we need to go 2 hours that day.
I think that's an excellent decision. We would probably want to, normally we go, Janet, to about 11. So should we extend it to noon on that board meeting?
If we do have the ability to predict longer board meetings and you're expecting all board meetings to be there, my gut says we're going to go over an hour and a half with a special presentation. I'd like to schedule it to noon with the goal to be out by 11:30. My next
Sure.
meeting that day is up at the Naval Air Station at 1, but I know somebody will put something into that slot if I don't protect it. So
Okay, excellent. We will do that. We will extend June's meeting to noon.
all right, thank you.
Yeah, great idea.
Don't want to be a
The
prima donna,
other-
but I know my calendar.
The other project I'd like to touch on is the branding of our buses. As part of an ongoing effort to streamline branding, we have an update regarding our fleet. You may recall in 2023, we received only one bid for $627,000 to update our fleet with current branding. After further evaluation and fleet vehicles reaching the end of their useful life, we will update 22 vehicles to align with our current brand identity. We are approaching the update with a streamlined and more cost-effective method. Within the approved palette of colors in our current branding, we have selected ocean blue and white, a clean, sleek design with a white logo on blue and the colored logo and Island Transit's name above the windows. This update will save Island Transit approximately $15,000 per bus over previous vinyl solutions. And I attached a rendering. So,
Looks good.
good, thank you. Comments?
Question.
Yes, sir.
My visit with you previously was there are certain buses that are being used to take people to Ryan's house from the pickup with regard to the homeless folks, or I didn't know the gist of it. Do we have buses that are being used or that were bought or that were given over to, do you understand?
I do.
Could you
I
clarify that
understand
for
your
us?
question,
Okay.
sure. Prior to my tenure, we had a gift program. Am I using that correctly? I'm looking at my maintenance folks. For different nonprofits. And so we had vehicles that were given to the Haven Shelter to transport folks back and forth. What I have noticed is those vehicles that were on site, which are now beyond their useful life and out of our control, still have Island Transit logos on them. Should we do a program like that in the future, all of that will be removed before they leave our property because it leads to a public misperception that those are our vehicles on the road. Does that answer your question?
That answer the question, or is there any way to put any pressure on the users of the vehicles to?
Well, not with any teeth.
No.
We could ask
Um,
I'm sorry, I interrupted you, Melinda.
No, that's okay. I have reached out to both the executive director and the president of their board just to discuss perhaps utilizing those vehicles more frequently in transporting those participants, and they have difficulty finding any volunteer drivers, so they're struggling.
I see, thank you.
Commissioner St. Clair, did you have a
I
comment?
just was gonna say if it is within their capacity that we would voluntarily take the logos off for them if they were willing.
I'm happy to put that forward. I would prefer that.
They're not painted on. Correct? They're all vinyl?
Will,
Yes,
they are vinyl.
they're fine.
Okay.
That's exactly what I was thinking is we probably can pull those off pretty quickly. And I think it's a serious concern that there are branded Island Transit vehicles are operating on Whidbey Island that are not owned by us. So I think that would be a priority to get that done.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. That was my impression as well, and it was within the agreement that they were to remove it. But should we do that in the future, we will make sure that's removed before we go. Now, before I leave this conversation, Michael,
Point of clarification, they are not logoed. We have never sold anything as Island Transit in my tenure, with our logo on it. They are still colored in our previous branding, so from the outside at 10 feet at 60 miles an hour, they look like an Island Transit vehicle.
okay,
Where
okay,
they still have our coloring on them, but they do not have our logo on them,
okay.
And no lettering?
no lettering.
Okay.
Okay, very good, because case in point, I was driving by, that's how I noticed it. I was driving by and saw the colors of the old
Right.
branding on there, and I automatically identified it with Island Transit, so very good point. Well,
So there is another program out there that's some, I think, different scenarios like churches and stuff, where it's a ride link van. That's a total separate scenario from the gifted vehicles. And they say ride link on the side.
But, and they are formerly our buses?
They're still our
Oh,
vehicles.
still
They
are.
are basically free lease to different agencies like churches,
Right.
veteran centers, stuff like that, so.
May I speak to it? With regard to, impressions, one of the things that we need to work toward is that Island Transit can be more setting aside the impression that it's just a bus service for homeless people. I mean, obviously it's not, but what I'm trying to say is there's kind of a perception that, you know, that is one of the critical populations that we serve. And so anything that we can do to minimize or dilute that perception is important for us to draw what I would call non-homeless people to use the bus, because I've heard it repeatedly said, well, I'm not gonna get on that bus. I see who's on there. So that's just a matter of information.
yes, I hope to impress upon our community that we're here for all community members.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, lastly, I'm just gonna touch on the other news. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, when you're done, I don't want to interrupt.
No,
I
please
just
go
had a
ahead.
little more information for you on the ride link. It's for the South End Veterans Program where they take veterans to Seattle. Because there's no, VA hospital on the island. And that's what Ride Link has been used for, as well as CADA at one time and Island Senior Services. The Community Surplus Vehicle Program is one that the churches have had access to. But they are different, and I just wanted to make the clarification because they're separate programs. And if you're concerned that they the perception, I just want to make sure that you understand the two differences. That's all.
Thank you, Meg.
I'm sorry, it's something along those lines.
Right.
So just two more items under other news that I wanted to give clarification. We spoke early on, I believe at one of my very first board meetings, about the state's requirement for an ADA transition plan. We have received information. I'm going to claim it incorrect because I came from an urban system where ADA transition plans are absolutely required by WashDOT. However, we have received in writing from WashDOT that rural transit agencies are not required to provide a plan. That said, Island Transit will still continue to develop our plan to address ADA requirements in its facilities and transfer stations as we update and renovate. So we want to make sure we are still going to be paying attention to that. I just wanted to make it clear that it is not a required document to be turned in to the state. And lastly, we have our board retreat. A reminder that we will meet at the Pacific Rim Institute location from 8:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. on Thursday, May 29th. A 15-minute interview with each board member and the facilitator, Kelly Johnston, is required by May 16th for maximum effectiveness of our time together. So really looking forward to having everyone there.
And if you've not scheduled your time with Kelly, if you could reach out to Meg, that would be fantastic. I know she's got a list of times that Kelly is available.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Meg,
All right.
Jenny, I'm gonna have Layla reach out to Meg. I've been mostly out of the office this week, so I will have Layla schedule that 15 minutes.
Perfect.
Could be a phone interview.
It's a,
Yes.
it's a phone interview and it's just
Easy.
15 minutes. There's about 4 or 5 questions, correct questions, I think she's just trying to set the table for what the expectations are.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay.
I have a question about the executive director's report. There was nothing in there about the Whidbey Camino Land Trust and the I'm lacking words. The removal of the conservation easement. Thank you.
We are still in the process. There has been no update, Craig, from last month. We are still in the process of our appraisal.
Really? Okay.
Well, good morning, and we're going to talk about our finance report for the month of March. First slide shows that Finance Committee reviewed this on April 28th. Next slide, please. The cash sources. Sales tax revenue up by 126,000, almost 11%, versus March of the previous year. And we saw grant revenue for 2 months, and we received it for the months of December and January. We received it in March for December, January. Next slide, please. If we look at sales tax actual versus our budget, our March sales tax, which was collected in January, of about 96,000, are almost 8% above budget. And you can see this, in the green line, you can see the second month in a row where we've had pretty good revenue returns versus budget. That's really good. However, for the year, we're behind our annual budget expected amount by 0.39%. So we're pretty close, staying on target, which is good news. Operating grant revenue, once again, we collected for 2 months, and you can see the amounts, but we did 4 different operating grants. We didn't have any contract revenue or other significant revenue mentioned. Next slide, please. Investment interest and rates, our March investment interest was about $157,000. It was up almost 7%, or about $9,800 from last month. And in March, we had 67 million invested in the ICTIP, which dropped 10 basis points, or about 3.5%. So we can see it with this chart that the LGIP, which ICTIP also invests in, has been dropping recently. Interest rates have been coming down. And the ICTIP, Highland County Treasurer's investment pool, has also decreased slightly. This next slide is just to give people some perspective. I've heard people say, well, where are we now related to the past And there have been some questions about it, is it better to be in the LGIP or ICTIP? This gives a little more perspective. The green line again is the ICTIP. And when interest rates were really falling, you can see how all three investment rates get corresponding to those pools, how they dropped, and then when rates went way up in more recently, where those pools stood in providing interest to investors. And so what strikes me about this chart is that when interest rates are really good, it seems like the spread is greater than when when times were not so good. So that just
Paul,
gives
can
you
I
more-
ask you a question about that?
Sure.
That is absolutely true. That said, having been in finance and investment policy conversations on multiple boards, one of our, I assume, finance priorities or policy priorities is predictability and cash reserves. While it is true that the greater the gains in those good times, as this graph demonstrates, is it not also true that the greater the instability and lack of predictability and losses in when you're following these different curves, and that a flatter curve gives you more predictability? Do you think that's an accurate interpretation?
I think that's totally true. I was trained as an accountant, and one of our key principles is being conservative, and we want consistency and predictability. And as a public agency, we're even limited as to what types of investments we can make where we get certain returns. So that is a really high value. And I think you're right in including it in the discussion with this picture, because this is only a picture of rates and not about conservative trust of public funds. So, but I just wanted to include it because I know people have asked this question, and it's, I thought I would just respond, but the chart.
Thank you,
Next
Paul.
chart, next chart, please. Cash uses, March cash payroll, that was down about $28,000 to 2.7%. And cash payroll is down 214 or about 70% from last year due to timing of benefits. When we look at it on an accrued basis, we see that our payroll is down about $22,000. And when we investigated that further, we looked in and saw that one person who was leaving this organization only received one payment, payroll payment, and then we had 3 operators on FMLA. So that's the reason for the decrease in payroll in the month of March versus February. Non-payroll payments of about $300,000 was down almost $820,000, 73% from last month, largely due to us not paying our WISTA premium again, which is a little over $500,000. And then there were also drops in fuel parts, software, and consulting payments in March as compared to February. Non-payroll payments were down by $110,000 or 27% from last year at this time. Next slide. Not much to talk about here with March capital payments.
Could we, sorry to interrupt, Paul, can we go back? You mentioned FMLA. Were those employees drivers or were they non-drivers?
There were 3 operators.
Okay. Yeah, so that's going way back in the meeting. There's another reason for us to understand that we have 3 drivers out on FMLA. They're not able to drive. So again, we just need to understand the trend and who's behind the wheel. Thank you.
Next slide, please. So when we talk about cash reserves, our monthly cash went up almost 1.5 million. It was, we had lower than expected expenses, and we had a double dose of grant income. So that's really the major components behind that increase. Next slide, please. if we look at it graphically, you can see, got a little bit of seesawing there, the last few months, but, this month we saw an increase, now our cash balance is at $70.5 million. This chart just really illustrates, the breakdown between our assigned reserves. And you can see our general cash reserve, is just up slightly. Next slide, please. The budget versus actual on the revenue side, you can see our target 3 months in, 25%. And we're above budget in interest and but we, as we noted before, sales tax was slightly down below that 25%. Next slide, please. And on the expense side, same target, 25%. Utilities, insurance, and subscriptions are above that. Of course, our insurance is paid once a year in full. So we'll naturally be ahead there. But you can see with our, and subscriptions, a lot of those are paid right at the beginning of the year. So I think things are pretty much on track, other than you can see our big ticket item, again, capital is only been spending 4% so far. Next slide, please. So these last 3 slides I have for you they were discussed at the finance committee meeting, but I didn't have the slides prepared at the meeting, so but this report that slide you're seeing right now is part of the finance report. It's the last page there. And I just wanted to address it because we were up last meeting about late fees. And I thought it was important to dispel any kind of rumors or perceptions that may be negative. I think it's good to just present the information and be as transparent as possible. So this slide, again, is just a smaller version of the last page in the finance report, and it shows the late fees in 2025 that and at the time of the report. So you can see there's 4 months there: January, February, March, and April. And what I did is I put colors to the different fees to distinguish them between ones that we feel we couldn't avoid at the time, and then others that were avoidable in one respect or another. So when I say they're not avoidable, for example, the vendor listed in April and March gave us late invoices and charged us a fee and wouldn't allow us out of the finance charge, even though we felt that they were part of that. They were really the cause of the problem, and their terms are so short that we find it very difficult to meet their terms by the time they get payment. So February, there were more where we could have probably done a better job. However, it was a short month and our payables account was out for a week of that month. So it really put us under a lot of pressure to do it. And then the biggest one, WISTIP, was just a mistake, invoice, just not tracking well enough on an invoice. So, but I did want to make that distinction between the ones that are kind of purple and those that are blue, which will help us understand the next chart. So, next slide, please.
I start, we have a question first.
Oh, yeah.
On that WISTIP, it's not a structural issue with regard to the scheduling, so in the future, that should not be an issue.
I don't think it will be, especially since a couple things happened there. We received the invoice in December. It's a 2025, we received it in 24, it's a 2025 expenditure. We want to wait to put it in that year. So we were waiting until January. And, both myself and our AP accountant were coming back off of vacation. So there was a natural disconnect there. He didn't pick it up. And that was just an error. He didn't pick it up out of his email box quick enough. And it was just left off the table. and not put into the system. And it really is an aberration.
Okay, so we don't expect this to be a recurring deal.
I'll be looking for it.
Okay.
Yeah,
thank you.
we have a lot of
I
people-
never want to receive one of those emails from our insurance carrier.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
But the minute we identified it, it was paid the same day and.
Yeah,
Webster
I was gonna say, if there's one thing we wouldn't want to be late on, it would be the whiz tip payment.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
not good.
Well, they don't drop your coverage. What they do is they made a ruling last year to charge interest. And so since it's a significant value, over $500,000, they're charging interest on that and it starts them out quickly. So, we never want to be late on any payment, but some are unavoidable and then others are avoidable and WISTIP. I'm sure we'll never forget that.
Thank you.
We had an opportunity, I'm sorry, Paul, to talk during the finance committee, and I really appreciate your openness to talking about some of the opportunities for automation and for backup to help overcome some of these.
Yeah, that will be my next slide. I just wanted to show you this. This is our late fees and AP transaction volume. So you can see the green line are the number of purchases that are being processed in a given month. And then, again, this is where the colors come in, is the purple are those that are unavoidable and the blue are the ones that are avoidable. And you can see, and I call them forced late fees if they're unavoidable. And so you can see February was a heavy month, a short number of days we had a person up for a week. And you can see the pressure put on and there's, late fees mounted there, but outside of that, most of the late fees we're seeing are those forced late fees. And we're trying to overcome that with different strategies, and that's what I'm gonna present on the next slide. But, yeah. I don't know if anybody has any questions about this one, but you can see we do a pretty good volume, and there are a lot of people who have done payables for their own companies oftentimes say, well, it's not that hard, you just get a bill and pay it, but that's not the case in a government agency. There's a lot of documentation that's required before we can even pay it. And we're held to those standards by auditors, so we can't just not do it. Okay, next slide, please. So to overcome these unforced late fees, we've recently put in additional processes so that we don't have late fees. And I just wanted to mention that we've already done this starting the beginning of March, and some have even been going before March, but and these changes have been made before the review that's being done right now by Clark Newber to review procurement. So these are improvement steps that we've taken ourselves in our own department. And I'll just go through them quickly. Our purchasers are now creating their own automated POs in NetSuite, so that speeds up the process. And I should say, essentially, what we're trying to do is speed up the process so that we can meet the timelines of the vendors. So now we have purchasers that are able and willing, they're creating their own POs, which is helpful. Finance sends out credit card statements to cardholders to serve as a helpful procurement checklist for document prompts. So people have said that that's been really helpful, is that to see all their purchases and then they can just check off the documents that they need to find for that particular month. Education, the purchasers now submit completed procurement packets instead of single documents. So this has been really helpful, where if somebody creates their own PO and then they know what documents need to be attached, if things come in, let's say a receiving document or invoice or whatever, they just attach them all and then they sign off on it and submit the whole package. So that makes it a lot easier on our AP account. Before, people would just turn in one document at a time, and then we'd have to do all the sorting and figuring it out. So that's been really helpful and promoted by our AP accountant primarily. Finance provides instructional folders to buyers explaining the procurement process. So we handed those out to people. few months ago, just explaining what documents are required and what steps to take and how to put together those packets. So that, I think as people commented, they really like that with those. And then it also, inside the folder, it has forms that they can use that they need to fill out. I'll just quickly get through this. Finance sends open PO lists. People have seen that come through their emails. AP is paying weekly instead of monthly. AP is dividing vendor payments to what they're allowed to pay rather than waiting for the full collective. AP is reshuffling vendor payments to pay what's allowed, if vendors say are late on sending in their invoices. And AP is contacting vendors to improve terms of payment. So we've been actively doing that, not successful in all cases, like the ones that we were showing on the 2 slides ago, but we've taken all these steps and we've seen improvement. I think it's just gonna get better, even before, Clark Brewer gives us all the recommendations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question.
I much appreciate the proactive approach. It looks like you've got a process or process improvement, so it's a direct reflection of your excellence and the senior leadership of the district too.
And just as a quick comment, thank you, Paul. While, we definitely are being proactive here, it's really important to note that we have not received the final assessment yet from our external audit, which will likely also make many improvements and changes to what's existing today. I think the biggest thing to drive home is we went from making payments once a month to weekly, which is much closer in line with what normal business processes are.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay, with that, we are going to go into executive session. An executive session to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency matters relating to agency enforcement actions, or to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency litigation or potential litigation, which the agency, the governing body, or a member acting in an official capacity is, or is likely to become a party when public knowledge regarding the discussion is likely to result in an adverse legal or financial consequence to the agency. RCW 4230110I. And so we will release everybody from the room and put
Should we
the,
lump them all together?
I'm sorry.
We-
Oh, I'm sorry. You want me to read the second,
Yeah.
second item? I apologize. An executive session to consider the selection of a site or the acquisition of real estate by lease or purchase when public knowledge regarding such consideration would cause a likelihood of increased price. RCW 4230110B. And so we,
Then we'll have to follow by a closed session.
followed by a closed session regarding collective bargaining agreement. And
How long altogether? 10 minutes?
I would give us 15.
15? Yeah.
okay,
And
15.
during the closed session, I will have Paul and Terrence rejoin us.
Okay. So, Meg, if you would be so kind as to put folks in the waiting room for when we resume, that would be fantastic.
And you're still muted.
Unmute.
Okay.
Nope, we're not muted. Oh, okay.
No, you're not. Sorry, that was me.
We are rejoining, our regular session and are complete with our executive and closed sessions. No action was taken. And so we have, any other business? Any other board member comments? Then we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today.